There was just so much cocaine that needed to be done.
He has a gerbil in his asshole. You want to know how he got it up there? I'm like, I guess you started. Go ahead, tell me.
That's lunch conversation. I never liked you, but it turns out you're a great guy.
Thanks, man. We try to keep things light because like the sad reality is, people are dying around us. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Badass Motherfucker Podcast. Today we actually talked to one of my old coworkers, Tim Van Pelt. He always had a way of making you relax your shoulders, making you feel comfortable, which helped me a lot because it kept me from stressing out. And if I'm not stressed out, I'm able to think more clearly when working in the ER, which is very important. Before we jump in, I'd like to invite you to join this community of badass motherfuckers and help me continue to highlight the amazing people in healthcare who never get the credit they deserve for keeping our healthcare community strong. Hit that subscribe button, and if you have a coworker who you believe is a badass motherfucker, you can nominate them at badassmufkr.com, and let's share them with the world. I can't wait for you to meet him. Here is Tim Van Pelt. This nurse came up to me, and she was like, guess what I found at this patient's asshole the other day? I'm like,
right.
What the fuck are you talking about?
That's lunch conversation.
She was like, he has a gerbil in his asshole. You want to know how he got it up there? I'm like, I guess you started. Go ahead, tell me.
Yeah.
He stuck a tube in his ass, put the hamster there, lit a lighter, and lit the lighter and burned the areas of the pipe so the hamster would only go up into his asshole. Once it was in there, he took out the tube and it died in there, and that just got him off. And he does it multiple times, but this time he couldn't get the hamster out, so he had to go to the ER. That was just a casual conversation after a show on a Thursday night.
I've had a guy who said, and this is the classic story. I'm home and the ceiling light burned out, so I had to change it. So I get the stool, and I'm getting up and like I said, I'm home, so I'm naked. So I'm up there getting the bulb, and I slipped and I fell, and I don't know who put a Breck hairspray can on the floor, but it went just right up my ass, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. Have you Talk to Larry? Because he did the same thing, and it
somehow fell perfectly in the right spot, and you were naked. It's always, I was just doing it naked.
I'm home. I'm naked.
Oh, naked.
Yeah. So I'm glad he wasn't, with tools like, a jigsaw or anything. Could be awful. Do you remember that Garabi, who was the medical director at our ER, used to have
of course I know.
Had a shelf, and on the shelf, and, after being cleaned and everything, he had an array of things that we took out of people's ass. Candles.
Did he?
Oh, they were all up there. Belt buckles.
In his office?
Yeah, in the office. After a while,
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. 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 Little trophies. It's like his, his doctorate diploma and what he's taken out of people's asses. Yeah. And everyone had a story, Wally, what was this one? Oh, that one. Oh, that's some story. It's like, I bet all of them are.
He was an interesting guy.
He was. And he had this horrible temper when I first started. But if you ever wanted to learn something and he had a minute, he was all yours. And he would sit down with you and he would explain it, and he would share his knowledge with all of us. And that was the great thing about him. He also did some very strange things. One day I was watching him. He was in the ER. He was at his desk over on the north side there. And I see him, and he's talking Spanish. He speaks Arabic, doesn't speak Spanish very well at all. And he's speaking Spanish, or trying to speak Spanish, to this gentleman. And I'm looking at him, and I know that this guy is Japanese. But Wally decided Spanish was the way to go on this. So,
what?
I know. I walk over to the guy. I'm like, "Konnichiwa, wakarimasu na?" And he was like, "Okay." And he sits down, and Wally's talking to him in Spanish. It was great. But we had a lot of
funny, man.
Yeah, a lot of funny things, a lot of really sad things. lot of funny things. You know, I came into the game very late. I mean, I started when I was 50 as a nurse.
That's right. So you started working as a nurse at 50.
50 to 70, 71.
21 years.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
I'll be 72 in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
All right. Congratulations.
Yeah, I know.
So what were you doing? What were you doing before nursing? You had a whole life before that.
I did. I had a lot of jobs, a lot. I sold women's shoes. Delightful.
Nice.
I did all kinds of construction work. There's an old, and because I was an actor, there's a great line from a Woody Allen movie where he says, the guy says, "Yeah, I'm an actor." He goes, "Oh, really? What restaurant?" And so that's, if you're an actor, you work at a restaurant. So I worked at a lot of restaurants in New York in the 80s, which was really difficult because there was just so much cocaine that needed to be done. And so it was really hard to concentrate on getting people their food. So I worked as a waiter there, and then for a long time I was a working actor. I worked on soaps and on probably 100 commercials and TV and some films and stuff like that. So then I decided, I talked to Amy. I said, "What do you say we go out west and see about trying the West Coast and nighttime TV, et cetera?" So I came to the West Coast and got an agent and started going out, and I, booked some TV shows and hit some commercials and that kind of stuff. And it was okay. And then it just sort of slowed up and nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And Amy said, "I hate to say this, but you need to go get a job." I was like, "Oh, yeah." So I went back to waiting tables. I was a much better waiter the second time around because I was doing much less cocaine. And then I fell, actually, and broke my shoulder, and I couldn't carry a tray. I couldn't carry a tray, and it would just fall on the floor, which didn't help. So there was this thing called Vocate that said, "We will retrain you." And it was a government subsidy thing. And they sent me to nursing school. They said, "What do you want to try?" And I was trained as a medic in the Air Force. So I knew that kind of work. And so I thought, okay, I'm 48, I guess then, and starting back to school and sitting at the kitchen table and doing homework with my two sons. And they would help me with the math because I could do math with them till about 5th grade. And then it was done. Then whatever they were doing
5th grade
had nothing to do with me. So then I was an actor.
Yeah.
And then I went and I became a nurse at 50. I was the president of my class because I was far older than everyone. And they just said, "Yeah, president, huh? Let the old guy do that." And so I did. So
you were also an ER tech before that, right? Is that what I heard?
I was an ER tech. I got my EMT while I was starting college, and started working in the ER as a tech so that I could transition. My plan was to transition from tech to nurse, and it actually worked out. I was a tech while I was in school, and then when I was done with school, I transitioned to being a nurse, and it was very hard. Really hard to do.
Yeah.
It was not an easy transition. It was a very tough first year for everyone, for all new nurses. And I got afforded a little bit more wiggle room because I think I was older. And so people thought I knew more than I did. And, but then within the year, I proved to them that I was an idiot and did enough idiotic things to go, "Oh yeah, he's a new nurse." We used to fill out these toe tags when people died. And then I thought, why don't we just take a sticker, put the sticker on there and save all the writing? And so that's what I did. Small problem. The sticker that I put on the toe tag of the dead person was still up on the 4th floor and very much in disagreement about being dead. And so that was a big lesson.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was one of your first early mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of them.
Yeah.
There were a lot of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I remember when I was becoming a tech the first time in the Air Force, I was sent down to the central supply room to get 20 feet of fallopian tubing. Yeah. I went tearing down there. Yeah. I went tearing down there. I was like, out of breath. Like, listen, I need 20 feet of fallopian tubing. I need it now. And the guy just looked at me like, how stupid are you?
Was it one of like a hazing activity for you where you knew?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I did it to other people, so it was okay. Yeah.
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 So man, man, you lived an entire life before nursing. Man, I guess my question is, do you feel like everything you've learned, or like, who you were before that, did it help shape who you were as a nurse and how you like viewed patient care and how you took care of people?
Yes. I've been asked, do you feel bad that, you were an actor and sometimes people would even recognize you and now you're a nurse? And I said, actually, no, because everything that I ever learned as an actor, I've used as a nurse. I've learned how to read a room. And I'm sure this has helped you.
Oh yeah.
And when you walk on stage and in your mind, you know what you're going to do. And then you look out there and you think, I'm going to change this up a little bit because the room was not ready for that. And it's the same thing. You're going into a patient's room and you can read them. How sometimes they seem distraught, but there's something about them and there's just a gut feeling, just experience. And you can crack a little joke here and it's going to lighten things up. And you do, and they laugh and it changes. I had a great experience with one of the docs. Chenevière's father came in and he needed a Foley catheter. So do I need to explain what a Foley catheter is? I mean, it's a tube that we have to insert into the penis, goes up into the bladder, and it is just as much fun as it sounds like, really uncomfortable. So anyhow, I go and I tell him what we're going to do. He said, okay. So I said, you just breathe, relax and breathe. And I'm just going to put this in. You ready? Go ahead, breathe. And I put it in. He went, Jesus Christ. And I kept going. I just, listen, you can call me Tim. And I just kept going. And he started laughing and he laughed and he relaxed and the tube went right in and it was very good.
Yeah. See, and that's what's so great about you. That's what I remember about you, like so distinctly, like always able to lighten the mood. Even like a very serious situation where like a scared patient would just relax. You're really good at people the space to just, it's going to be fine. We're all here. And
one of the things I did all the time were people who came in with a big cut. They'd have a cut on their arm or something and they were like freaking out. And I'd reach over and I go, hello. Yeah, it's deep. It's deep. So they would think that's so silly that they would laugh. And then everything was better. So and sometimes, as a comedian, you think it's a great line and you throw it out there and it just doesn't land. And that happens in the ER too. And then you just have to sort of backstep and go, I'm sorry. I was just trying to lighten the mood.
Has that happened?
Yeah, sure it has. But it's not worth not trying. Going up to kids, young kids. And I show up and I'm this old guy and they're not sure what's going on. And I'll just start talking to him like this. What's the matter with you? Why are you here?
Yeah.
And they'll just look at me and we'll get to chuckling and laughing. And then I'll maybe read a book to them and use different voices and stuff. And that is really very satisfying to be able to do that.
I think it's so important that you're able to do that for people because people come in very scared and afraid, kids especially, right? And to, again, like you give them permission to be like, be a little, by you being a little silly, you tell them that, hey, it's going to be okay. Like, I got this. Like we can relax.
Right. There is this little space in all of this fear, in all of this strangeness that's just like anywhere else. And it's funny. And we're going to do some things and we're going to laugh and we're going to do, you learn some tricks about starting IVs. And if you can get them to laugh or you can get them to cough, really cough, and then make fun of them. Is that the best you can do? Come on. And get them to really cough. And when they really cough, you just pop that IV in, and a lot of times they don't feel it. So little things like
Yeah.
that that you learn.
It's so important to have someone like you too for like when I was starting out, as an ER tech in the trauma room for the first time, I'm tense. Like I'm scared. I don't really know what's going on. I'm trying to like, hide the fact that like I'm nervous. So I'm really serious. And I had a guy at Stanford who was like you at UCLA. There's a trauma. He came in. I was trying to get the blood pressure cuff on him. I was like the scissors. I was cutting off his clothes. This nurse, his name is Ron, saw that I was really tense. So when he was hooking the patient up to the bag of saline, he kind of just splashed some at me, just lightly, just be like, "Hey man, what's going on?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, we're good, we're good."
All right.
And it just calmed me down. Like I felt my shoulders just like relax,
Right.
and like I was able to think clearer, and I worked better. But
Yeah.
there's just those little moments where you're just like, "Hey, just relax, be a little silly."
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
fun.
I had a guy. This was a while ago, and he came in because he had gotten bitten in the face by a dog, and I thought, "Oh man, tough." I said, "How did that happen?" And it turns out he was getting high with his girlfriend, and it was her dog. And then he did some Courvoisier after, getting high, and he was feeling really good. And he thought it would be really funny if he bit the dog. And
Oh,
this was
jeez.
a black Great Dane named Dracula. So he bit this dog, and the dog bit him right in the face, just get him right in the face. And I said,
Yeah.
"How did he manage to get to your face with your head so far up your ass?" And he started laughing. He said, "I know. I
He
won't
laughed
do."
at that?
He did.
Oh man. And that's one of those moments where you really had to read the room. Is this guy gonna take this the wrong way? Probably
Yeah.
not.
Actually, at that point, I think I didn't care. He deserved it.
He deserved it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing that hasn't been presented in the ER. There's nothing that you probably haven't seen. And there's funny things, and there's incredibly sad things and really horrible things.
Oh my God.
And like
Yeah. Talk about that.
a kid's death, having a kid die in front of you. The strongest the memory that I have of something like that is that I remember every single person who was in the room when that happened. And it's a bonding experience that is unlike anything else. And those people that you've worked with in those situations that have gone through that with you, you are maybe not the closest friends, but you are friends and family forever. These are
Yeah.
astonishing people and in astonishing situations. I used to think when I became a charge nurse that I had to somehow be the leader, but that wasn't it at all. I just needed to let them do what they do and just be there to bounce stuff off of.
Yeah, man.
One of the things
Oh
that
man.
I remember I'm most proud of is that any time at the end of a code, and particularly if it was a kid, but for end of a code that they died, and everybody was time of death is whatever, and everybody starts, and I generally, if I was there or if I came in at the end, I would say, "Hold on, just hold on," and I'd say, "Let's just take a minute to realize this person's life who just passed, and to
Yeah.
take a minute to show some respect for that, but also to look around this room and look at each other and know that when you do walk out of here, you will have done everything you could have to help save this guy or this woman. It just wasn't their time." And I always tried to do that because you needed a break. You needed a moment of hesitation to realize, yes, that there was a whole life in front of you that just ended, and that you could walk out with your head held high because you did everything that you possibly could to try to save them. It was just their time to go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, I
Oh
didn't
my
mean.
God. Damn. I didn't did not expect to cry today, Tim. But
Sorry.
yeah, no, when you said that, like I had so many flashbacks of like just, standing around like a super bloody, messy trauma room and just like, thinking to myself, man, like we couldn't make it happen. And
Yeah.
some of like one of my craziest memories is when we had a gentleman. He's very young. I think he was in like his early 30s, late 20s. He was playing the guitar and he just passed out. He fainted, and his wife called 911 and brought him to the ER. And he was a really large man, and his heart. He had a heart attack. His heart stopped, and I remember doing CPR on him. He was so big. I was pumping on his chest. I'm like, is this even working? Am I even getting to his heart? I don't know. But everything was slipping. The pads were all over the place.
Yeah.
The gloves were wet. I'm sweating. And it got to the point where the doctor said, hey, man, like, I don't think this is working. And this is the type of doctor who likes to bring the family member in and show them, here's everybody here who's working on him. It's not working. We're going to have to call it, right? So he brings his wife in, who's, again, early 20s, late 20s, early 30s. And she's just in shock because there's this room full of people, working on him. And we're a teaching hospital, so there's a ton of people in there. And he says, it's not working. I'm sorry, we're going to call it. And so he calls, time of death. And she's still in shock. We all stop working. And 3 seconds later, she just starts screaming. And she starts screaming at everybody, saying, I didn't tell you to stop. Why did you stop? I didn't tell you to stop. And she runs over to him. And she tries to like pound his chest to wake him up and just begs him to like wake up and like, let's go home. And what's crazy about that is before he came in, we were separated. Like, there's 3 beds in the trauma room, and I was on another side of a curtain of a bed cleaning a guy's wound out who had a bike accident. And so I was cleaning his wound out, and then the trauma alert came in. So I said, hey, I'll be right back. Worked on this guy for like 30, 40 minutes. It finished, and I didn't take a break. I just went right back to the other guy who was on the other side of the curtain, who heard everything.
Yeah.
And I started cleaning him up again. He was like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And like 3 seconds later, we both just started crying. And me and this random other patient who had to hear all that happen. And I don't think I ever took the time to like, what the fuck just happened in there? I never had you there to be like, hey, let's take a moment and just acknowledge like this young man who was just gone too early.
Yeah. It gets weird, when it's someone who is close to your age. It gets very visceral. I mean, children are horrifying, and, elderly people, that's tough too. There's somebody's grandma or grandpa, that's very tough. But when they're your age, it really hits home that how tenuous this life we have is. And we see it in all its iterations. Young people who are, pissing their life away on meth, and, old people who have outlived their family and their friends, and they're just like, I'm ready.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and, it's funny being a nurse. You're not just a nurse in the hospital, you're also a nurse out of the hospital. And one of the really great things I got to do was to be with my father-in-law, who was just one of the greatest guys ever. He was 96. He was in planes in World War II, flying missions and stuff like that. But I got to care for him for his last year of life. I'd work, in the ER, and then on my days off, I'd jump on a plane, go up to San Francisco, and hang with him for a few days. And I did that for several months, and I got to see him all the way through to the end. And it was very satisfying. And he was ready. And there was a hospice nurse who came in and talked about terminal lucidity. It's a very interesting thing. And what happens is he'll kind of shut down. And then all of a sudden, he may wake up, look up into the corner or look off and seem to recognize something. Then he'll lay back, his breathing will change, and then he'll die. It's called terminal lucidity. I was like, wow. And about 3 weeks after she said that, that's exactly what Marty did. He was asleep. He wasn't answering questions anymore. He was just there. And then he woke up. He looked up into the corner of the room, saw something that he recognized, not sure, literally laid back down, put his head back. His breathing changed to like a Kuzmal kind of breathing. And then 10 minutes later, he was gone. And just as my sister-in-law was next to him, I had Amy on the phone talking to him. I was there. He was surrounded by family. It was it was an elegant death. It really was just that,
Yeah.
And there
that's
are,
what it sounds like.
Because we're so quick when someone starts to crash and we jump in and we're ready to, do all these things. And we have this Dr. Shavira, who I think went to Jesuits. He was going to be a priest or something. But anyhow, he was the doc that day. We all went tearing in and he just went, but everybody take a moment. And this was a very, she was 98 years old. And I think he knew, and he had talked with the family. He said, why don't we just sit for a minute? We'll just hold her hand and just kind of be with her. And that's what we did. We stopped all the nonsense and we just sat quietly and just were there with her when she went. And those are the kinds of things that, have a very special place in my memory. There are nurses who, there's one nurse in particular, don't have to know her name. She was a real party girl, party. And she was, she was beautiful and she was all of this. One day I went in and she was in the room she had pulled the curtain, she had turned the lights down, she had gone on the computer and got some music on and was just by herself holding this person's hand so they wouldn't die alone.
Yeah. Like those moments, they sound so beautiful, but I'm not sure if I had ever experienced something like that.
You're
where
young.
I had somebody where I had somebody come in and acknowledge and say, hey, man, like I think it's time. Let's just stay with them and just let it be. Just let them pass peacefully because, you work in the ER. It's like, crack their chest,
right?
Like throw as many tubes in them as possible. It gets really crazy.
I've had conversations with family members and to say, the person is, well in their 90s. There's no real quality of life. And with the husband or the wife, just want everything done that can be done and to take them aside and sit them down and explain to them in not too graphic, but very explicit detail. This is what's going to happen. And the person that you want us to save isn't there anymore. So why don't we not break his ribs? Let's not cause him all of that. And you just be with him and we'll be there at your side and we'll just let this happen. And then they are like, okay. And I have been thanked for that. And I've also had people who really weren't sure that was the thing that should have been done, but for the most part, they realized that this was the way to go,
Yeah. And I think that, and I think that's so important. Again, and to have someone like you there, like such a badass, to have someone like you there to explain that, like, listen, like death is part of life. And at some point, this person is ready to go. And I think we fight with a lot of people in the ER, especially family members who have like, it's usually their mom or their dad. And they almost feel like they're doing a disservice to their parents by letting them go.
Right.
Like, no. You need to save them. Like, I don't want to say it's selfish because I don't think that's right. But they almost don't know what else to do.
Exactly.
All they've
What
known
else do they
their
have?
entire life is to keep people alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we're just like, listen, like, we've seen enough to know that this doesn't get better. It's not going to get better. There's no use ripping them open and like causing them bodily harm.
Yeah.
Let's just let it happen. But to explain that in a way where they understand is so hard.
Usually I'll introduce myself and then for a second, I don't say anything. I don't know if you ever I took a class, and in this class I taught this idea that's an old idea, but it's one of the profound things that, especially as a nurse, because as a nurse, we have a lot of information. Nurses are pretty smart. We have a lot of information, and we have this element of our DNA that drives us to want to help as quickly as we possibly can. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, because you tend to listen to respond. Okay, I've heard what you're saying. I've got an idea in my head. I've got the information. I'm ready. But you're not, because you didn't listen to understand. And that's a huge difference. And that's one of the most important things that I learned, is to not say anything for just a little bit. Don't say anything. Because a lot of times it takes people a while to get to what they actually want to say. And if you stop them, you put yourself and them at a disadvantage. They don't feel like they've been heard, and you really don't know what's going on yet. So that's one of the most important things I think I've ever learned, is to listen to understand. And then you can be of some help. Then you can help. Then you can, even if it's in death, funny things happen. We had a guy who came in and his mother was there, and he was adamant that we save her. She's 90 something years old. And we have this long talk with her. And we say, let her go. And finally, after, an hour of this, he says, okay, we'll let her go. So we unplug everything, and her heart will not stop. It just won't. There's a reason she's 98. She's not giving up. He said, well, we're going to admit her. She's going to go up because, damn it, she won't die. One of the things I tried to teach nurses, and as an older nurse, is to try to rewire your brain a little bit. Because this is what happened. You go to work, you get there, you get everything going, you got your patient's call going. This patient is freezing. They need a blanket. You get them a blanket. They're like so thankful, more thankful than all the other medical stuff you've done. You've gotten them a blanket and they are in heaven. Thank you. Towards the end of the day, somebody says, Tim, we need an IV. We can't get this. And you go in there and you miss. You miss. Get the ultrasound machine. You cannot get this IV, right? So somebody else comes in, they give it a shot, and maybe they get it. End of the day, you pack up, you leave, you get in your car, you drive home. What do you think about? You think about the IV that you missed.
The one
you
IV
missed. Accept that. Own it. You tried that IV. You didn't get it. Shit. Now you're done with it. Let it go and think about, for the rest of the ride home, the 3 good things you did. Just pick 3 really good things that you did that made people stay in the ER a little bit better, even if it was just getting them a blanket. Think about that. And don't beat yourself up over the one IV that you didn't get. And that's what I try to teach them. It's a little rewire a little bit. And
that's so important. And first of all, don't underestimate the warm blanket for these people, man. That is like heaven when you give a couple of those out. It is freezing in the ER. People love it. We love it. The staff love it.
We're moving.
We're wrapped up in warm blankets all night. But what I wanted to say was, I love that you tell them to rewire their brains and focus on, the good things they did, because it's a 12-hour shift. Like, you're gonna mess up here or there. But for sure, you did a bunch of really great things. So to have them focus on the good things that happened instead of the bad, I think really fights against, burnout. Because if you're going home every day thinking, I'm a terrible healthcare provider, man, I can't believe I did that. I mean, it's gonna get to your head. It's gonna affect you.
Burnout is, and it was when I first started, the reason I became a nurse is I was told, this is, as an actor, all you hear is no, no,
Oh yeah.
oh, no, really, no. As a nurse, or as a nurse, someone looking for a nursing job, all you hear is yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
How about yes? And so it's wonderful. So you become a nurse, and it's really tough, and then you really get into it, and then it doesn't. Hi, I'm Burnout. I just thought I'd come in just to give you a heads up. I'm going to be making you feel really shitty and get really angry beyond you ever thought you could get. I'm just going to be doing that with you for a little while. Okay, just let you know. Bye. They never do that. It comes drop by drop by drop by drop over months and years, and you don't realize it. You don't know it. And then one day something happens and you become someone else. You completely lose it. And I say this from personal experience. Something triggered me. I had a bag of blood in tubes, in a plastic bag, in my hand. I was like, oh, and it went like that, and it flew out of my hand and hit the secretary in the head. Months later, she quit to get another job, and I got her a present. I got her a hard hat and a card that said, I would say I'd miss you, but I didn't. And I just melted down on the floor. Easily a fireable offense. They could have said, you know what, you're out, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And I had a nursing supervisor who gave me another chance. But it was a blessing in disguise, because now I knew it was there. I knew I had hit burnout, and I knew that there were things that you could do. I found out that there are things you can do, that there are people you can talk to, that the hospital, in fact, provides you to get therapy. And it was a great lesson. And one of the things that it brought me to was meditation. I used to arrive at least a half an hour early for every shift so I could see what the run of the room was doing, and then go and spend 10 minutes and meditate, and then come back in the best possible place that I could be. Sometimes it wasn't great, but it was the best place I could be that morning. And that really got me through the next 10 years. Was doing that. Yeah.
Wow.
Find something.
Meditation is a really great one. But yeah, like you said, burnout, it kind of creeps on you and it changes you. And some people, like you are great because you realized when it was changing you. I think a lot of the people who work at the hospital, when they deal with patients and, the politics of the hospital, it's really easy, so easy to get burnt out. And I know that I felt like after a while, I started showing up as a different person at work that I didn't necessarily like. I was very short with people. I just assumed that anybody who asked me for something was being lazy, right?
Yeah.
Like whenever a coworker asked me for something, I just assumed they were being lazy. Whenever a patient asked me for something, I just assumed it was not important. It shouldn't be at the top of my priority list. Man, it changes you, and then you go outside of work and you talk to these people at like the Christmas parties or the bars, and you're like, oh, you're really different. You're fun,
Yeah. Oh,
But
it's
some
not
people never,
you, it's me.
yeah, or whatever it is. But but some people never realize it. Some people never learn to cope with it, I think.
I worked with a nurse who would come in a rage, on the edge of tears. She just got there.
Yeah.
She's got nowhere to go. She was in such a rage when she walked in the door that we actually had to talk. Are you sure you want to do this job? You are so unhappy. And you spend all day just fighting back tears. And she has found a way, because now I think she's working less. Does a lot. She's really smart. and she's found happiness. She has figured something out. I don't know what it is, but I am so thankful for it because
Yeah.
it was just so tough to watch. And if you like her and you care for her, and in the ER, you get to love everybody. Everybody becomes someone you love because at one time or another, you've either given them your shoulder to cry on, or they've given you theirs. You can't not connect after these day after day after day, these experiences. And
Yeah.
and that's where that humor comes from. This crazy, crazy, wacky stuff we say to each other. It's like,
Yeah. We try to keep things light because like the sad reality is, people are dying around us.
mhm,
And so, if you think about it too seriously all the time, I mean, emotionally, I don't know what it would do to you, but I feel like I would be crying every single second in the ER. And that's not helpful for the next patient who's there for, a broken bone who's not
right.
dying.
You have to give it its due, and then set a limit on that. I'm going to give
Yeah.
this 5 minutes. You know what? And even towards the end of my experience at the ER, there were days when I said, "You're just going to have to give me 5." And I'd walk into the ortho closet and just breathe
Mm.
and sometimes cry and just take 5 minutes and then go back out. But that's it. After I walked out, that's it. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna drag this around with me all day. That's
Yeah.
it. I've given it its due. I've owned it, and now I'm going to move on and go say something really stupid to someone just for fun.
Yeah, don't underestimate the 5-minute walk outside.
Yeah.
Just into the hall, just into the hallway. Just get
Yeah.
out of there. Just get into the hallway, reset, and then come back because it's probably a shit show in there. So
Yeah.
just get out
Yeah.
and reset.
Or
Do it. Don't only do it for yourself, but do it for the people who you love, who are around you, who are your coworkers, who
right.
has your back.
You can go back in and not be a weight. You can go back in and be the lift,
Yeah.
So, and it's also funny when you walk into a closet for a minute and turn around and there's somebody already in there and they're crying and you're crying. And then,
There's always somebody already in there.
yeah.
Always.
And then you
Like
start
you too?
laughing.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are we done? I think we're done. Okay. Let's go.
Okay.
You want to get a beer for lunch? Okay.
Yeah. That's
We
so
never
funny.
did
So,
that.
like, of course not. It's so funny. Yeah, you reminded me. Yeah, the ortho closet especially. It would be like I would want to walk in there, just be like, okay, I just want to walk in, maybe just check my phone for a second. I walk in, somebody's already on their phone. They look at me, a little guilty. I look at them, and I just slowly pull out my phone, and we're like, okay, yeah, we're good.
Okay.
We're just gonna chill for like 2 minutes together.
I remember, I don't know why I thought of this. Maybe it was two guys in a closet with a phone, but I remember there was a guy in the hallway, homeless guy, and he's leaning. He's almost falling out of bed, looking into, 18 and 19. You know where those rooms are? Those two rooms off to the side there. And he's
Yep.
looking in, and I'm like, what the hell are you looking at? And I look over, and there is a guy, also homeless, standing with his gown wide open, ass hanging out, with porn on the computer. Has managed to get porn on the computer. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. How does he know how to do
So someone did log out.
I guess.
If someone did log in, it wasn't him watching porn. It was one of our
No.
coworkers because they were logged in.
But there it was.
Oh my God.
God, it was funny.
The second homeless guy just looking at it. Hey man, can I join? What are you looking at?
Right. He wasn't. He was just trying to sneak a peek, and try to be cool. But he's got one foot on the floor, and his butt is still up on the gurney, trying to look at this. And it's like, what are you doing? Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny patient interaction.
Oh yeah.
You get so many of those, I mean, I think, and imagine what we just talked about today. Like, there's that, but there's also like the kid who's not going to make it. There's
Yeah.
the grandma who we thought was not going to make it, but makes it. Like there's so many crazy experiences that you have in the ER. It's just, and this is why I wanted to start this podcast to talk to you, to like reconnect with people like you.
Some of those
about our experiences.
Yeah.
I'm 2-3 years removed now. I'm starting to feel a little disconnected to my community online. I'm like, why is that? But then I started doing these comedy shows, and I'm like, oh my God, this is why, because I haven't talked to you guys in so
Yeah,
long.
it
You
doesn't
know?
take long. I mean, people always ask me, "How's that first year of retirement?" And I have to say that it's detoxing. It's
Yeah.
not your stomach not getting in a knot every time you hear a siren. That Wednesday night before your normal Thursday shift, you're not almost vomiting because your stomach is in a knot because you start work the next day. And that just doesn't go away just because you retire. It stays for months and months and months. And then, so then I've been out for a year and I get a call from Olivia and she is desperate and she needs a nurse up at this camp that she works at every summer. And my wife is like, go do it. I think she's got someone on the side. But anyhow, she's like, go.
Get out of the house.
Really? That's true. I mean, I would come home at night at 7:30, 8 o'clock right? So she got home at 5:30 and she's had a few hours by herself, It was great. She could kind of, unwind and make dinner and wasn't that great? And then I'd come home. Now she comes home. Here I am. I'm right here. So
Yeah.
she's like, go ahead. And so I had to go redo my BLS. I had to go get fingerprinted and all that kind of stuff again. And then I get up there and I'm like, I haven't done this for a year. And I know just how you feel. Like you feel disconnected. Do you remember all the meds? And I'm telling you, camp is not like when I was a kid. There's 30-40% of the kids in the camp are on meds. They're on meds. So, and, Olivia, bless her heart, she's set it all up and has a system that works. But man, it was crazy. And it took me a few days to stop, being in a complete anxiety attack. And then kind of get my rhythm. Okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Okay. So but it was a lot. It was a long day. And, there were some breaks in between, but you were there all day and all night and all day and all night. And I know exactly how you feel when you say you feel disconnected. It's so intense that you can't possibly feel connected to it once you've been away for a while. You just can't. The intensity is too high. And the expectation for anything, goes down a little bit.
It's interesting. You said the kids were like, what type of meds were they on?
Like ADHD meds.
Yeah.
Some of them were on different programs. Some of them were on nut desensitization. So they'd have medications, but they'd also have a certain number of nuts, certain kinds of nuts they'd have to eat for that day to desensitize because they had nut allergies. And then I had on my cell phone, I had 2 kids who had diabetes, and I could follow their blood sugar on my phone and text.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, and if it got low, I'd text the counselor, we need a snack. So it wasn't, you were on this all day long. You're making sure, last thing I did at night was check the numbers, make sure they were okay before I went to sleep.
I wonder why that is, that kids are now on more, is it because back in the day we didn't really think things were wrong with them?
Yeah.
Or is it now? That must be it, right? Because back in the day where it's like they're kids, they're going to be fine. But now
they don't pay attention. This one just doesn't pay attention. Well, there's a reason for it and there's something you can do about it. So I had this one kid and he came in and I said, hey, what's going on? He said, I've got anxiety. I'm sweating. I don't feel good. I've got, basically I'm Jewish. And he was my favorite. He was just so funny. They were great. I mean, they were really good kids and they took, some of them were on some pretty heavy medications and they took it in stride. It was just something I have to do. And, but it was very interesting.
That's great for them, but it's almost scary to think that that's so normalized now.
Would this kid be the one who was getting suspended or expelled for acting out, who now has this medication that keeps them in school and keeps them functioning and keeps them social? And, so it's a tricky situation. And we also had some close encounters. If you go out the back of the infirmary, there's like a little walkway and there's a little wall around, just a little wall, with dirt around And one morning I went out and Bong had just been sitting there and he'd gotten up and he'd walked away. And there was like this string of lights on the ground. And in that string of lights was a big rattlesnake. And he had just been sitting there. So I call the guy and I say, "Do we have somebody to take care of a snake?" He said, "Oh yeah, Gary. Gary's the snake guy." So Gary, I have this image in my head. Gary's going to come over. He's going to get the snake. He's going to put him in a sack, and tie it up and take him off into the mountains and release him back into nature. No, Gary has a shovel, cuts the head of the snake off, and then scoops it up and takes. That's the snake guy's job, because you can't take a chance the snake's going to come back. Too many kids. And then 3 days later, I went out and there was a piece of paper on the ground, and I bent down, and just as I bent down, I went, "It'd be kind of weird if I stood up and there's, God damn," and there was another bigger snake in the same spot. And I was like, "Gary, we need you. Come on, Gary."
No.
And Gary came over and took care of the snake. And then I said, maybe we should get rid of this string of lights. Maybe that would be a good idea. We'll just move those somewhere else. But that was the end of the snake problem. That was my adventures in Idlewild.
That's why they need you there, Tim.
Yeah.
These conversations, man, like I cherish these so much. Like I'm so much more appreciative of these types of conversations now that I'm so far removed from the ER. You know, it brings me back, and like it reminds me of like, man, we did some crazy things. We did some we did some crazy things.
There were miracles happening some days that we got stuff.
There were miracles, and we just never acknowledged it because everything just moves so fast.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you and reliving some of this. And I'm very surprised because I never liked you. But it turns out you're a great guy. And thank you for inviting me to do this. I really appreciate it.
You were the guy. You were the one that people look to for guidance, for a morale boost. Someone you thought like, man, as long as Tim's here, he's in the room, like we're gonna be okay. And even if shit hits the fan and the patient doesn't make it, at least Tim was here, man. We know we did all we could because Tim was here. And that's kind of who you were. Even when things were like, even when things weren't so busy, you're always like the fun guy to hang out with too, to talk to.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
It's always great to have you. The one last thing I have is we like to do this thing called tips from whoever we're talking to, because my host here is tips from the ER. So if we can get a tip from Tim, what's a tip that you can give to people who come to the ER? Tips from Tim Van Pelt, retired ER nurse. What can you tell the people who are coming to the ER? What advice would you give them?
The people who are taking care of you are people just like you, with the same frailties and questions and fears and skills that you have. And all we're here doing is trying to help. That is all we're doing. So keep that in mind. You respect us, and we will more than respect you. It's that simple.
Love that. You heard it here first, man. Tim Van Pelt. There he is. Thank you, Tim. That was awesome.
Sure.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Hit that subscribe button for more conversations just like this. And if you have a coworker who you believe is a badass motherfucker, you can nominate them at badassmufkr.com, and let's share them with the world.